Okay, hi everyone. This is Dimitri, Sirota. I think we're still seeing people join the call, but maybe we'll get started. And for those of you who join late, we'll have a recording of this available afterwards that we'll share with all attendees. So first off, thank you again for those on the call for coming on. I know it's early on the West Coast. This presentation is going to be done by myself, Dimitri Sirota from Layer 7, now CA, and also Christian Kane, who's the research analyst at Forrester responsible for investigations around topics like mobile device management. Over the course of this talk, we're going to introduce a little bit about the concept of MDM, why enterprises are looking at technologies related to MDM and MAM. And then we'll also talk about how Layer 7's API management technology, the API gateway, can be used as an adjunct to secure the back end so that you have a true device to data center security solution spanning the app on the device and then the applications that reside in your data center. Before we get started, however, I would like to do just a little bit of housekeeping. If any of you are socially inclined, you can see here our Layer 7 hashtag for our webinar series. You could say that you're on it. I think that'd be wonderful. If you would like to follow us afterwards, we have presence on both Facebook and LinkedIn. Also, our blogs are great resources for both around what we're doing around mobility, what we're doing around cloud, what we're doing around topics like IoT. So we encourage all of you to follow us. And maybe with that, I will just pass the baton to Christian, and we could get started with his presentation.
Great, thanks, Dimitri. And thanks everybody for joining. Hopefully we have a lot of great stuff for you today. We're going to start off probably going through just a little bit of trends in terms of what we see with consumerization in the enterprise, and then we'll kind of talk about really what we see companies doing from an IT perspective to kind of deal with some of these consumerization trends around mobile specifically. And I always like to start out really just kind of talking about the difference or where we see some of the differences in perception and kind of reality here between what is consumer and enterprise. And I think the market perception that's out right now is still very much that that consumer technologies, enterprise technologies are going to be very separate. But in reality, and especially in the reality of those who are individual workers or employees for companies, I see this behavioral reality is really something that's merged. Their work and their personal lives continue to be more connected. They want the ability to use a single device for then their job, and also the ability to kind of look and discover new tools potentially that might help them. And some of this, I think, has been in response to maybe a feeling that IT maybe had been a little bit slow, or really maybe more so just that consumer technology and things like the App Store have come out, made it a lot easier for people to find tools that might be relevant to them. And so because of this reality, we also see that a lot of companies who have siloed really their technologies or their offerings for employees have kind of pushed a lot of employees to feel that actually the technology they have at home is better than what they have at work. And so again, this goes really into not only kind of the motivations for having a BYOD program potentially in an organization, but also just the fact that consumer technology is influencing expectations considerably. And therefore, that's actually pushing now into the enterprise market in terms of technology, not only just to support devices that might be used in both settings, but also really with a big push for really anything that's going to promote user experience or conduct a better user experience, more importantly. And those trends haven't really been present historically. So it's something that I think is a really important piece to kind of see here. And probably the best thing or one of the better things that I've seen from our data that's come along has really been just the idea that IT actually is now prioritizing end user preference and choice and flexibility. And a lot of these maybe softer or harder to get at metrics are actually definitely right here atop the list when we ask IT organizations about their plans to support a BYOD program. And obviously cost is in there, and the ability to better support the mobile workforce and some other things along those lines. But definitely having those kind of trends around user preference and choice shows a big shift in just even the thinking of where IT is going. And there is this drive to be able to say yes rather than say no to what employees are increasingly asking for, which is really more mobile access in general across a wide range of devices and using a wide range of tools too. And I think that's what makes this so difficult really for a lot of organizations is it's not necessarily something where you have a one-size-fits-all model, and we see a lot of organizations who've had that historically. But now really it's a break from that to really get as contextually relevant offerings as possible based on the type of worker to individual employees. And so there's a wide range of that because people have different jobs, and really things are going to, both devices and applications and data access is really going to shift considerably when you go from one responsibility to another. And that makes that difficult. It's not something where you can just kind of enable one service for everybody and all of a sudden all their needs are met. And that requires then a lot of flexibility for IT to be able to not only identify which areas they should focus on next and for whom, but also having some back end or at least some process in place that allows them to really kind of go at and solve these problems quickly, because they're not going to necessarily just have one issue that arises and then you kind of set it and forget it. There's absolutely going to be something that one group of workers might ask for, and that's a service that the company wants to deliver. But there's going to be probably 10 or 100 more in a backlog there that need to be addressed that probably aren't necessarily going to be in any kind of quick fashion, just given how we see a lot of organizations have been set up. So there is this desire to understand these requirements more quickly, but also then have technology and process in place that's going to kind of continue and make this easier for IT as a whole to support. And when we think about kind of and ask them what their challenges are too around BYOD beyond just kind of that, the diverse kind of landscape that exists for mobile, it really, boils down to also just security and additional risk that might be introduced because the company no longer has ownership. Ultimately what a BYOD program really introduces is a lot of challenge really to the security of it because we've built that around the endpoint, which has been the device. And so that ends up being the starting point, obviously, is additional device security. But when you don't actually control that hardware or own it, it really becomes an issue where you're starting to think maybe a little bit more about the application security. And so that's why we see that really up to the second kind of most popular here in terms of challenges. And then diversity of platforms and operating systems in general, and managing kind of the corporate and the personal all in one, ends up showing that there is a number of challenges from that risk perspective. And when we actually look at what companies are doing with device support as a whole, a lot of it's configuration, a lot of it's security on the device, and that's kind of the first step for many. But what they kind of realize is that they're getting more requests for applications. There's more interest internally too to build those applications, but there's going to have to be a support structure that can actually help manage those apps on an ongoing basis, give more apps to employees ongoing, and have then better connection to data. But you're going to need security on each one of those components. And so that's something that's still very much, for many companies at least, that they're kind of trying to figure out right now, trying to find a way to move beyond just the device security component. And so they start with that MDM, that device management component here to really have the device security on there. You want to have a PIN, you want to be able to wipe the device if it's lost or stolen. And that's a good start for many to kind of get their feet wet in BYOD. But usually it's only email, contacts, and calendar. It's really not necessarily the tools that people are going to need, which means essentially applications. And so because of that, MDM vendors have kind of fallen short. They've been starting to build in some of these capabilities to have some better app management, but it's just a completely different ballgame, essentially. You have a reality, really, of employees with a number of different solutions where the device is only a single component of it. You have cloud storage options that come into play, and employees definitely are interested in. You also absolutely have applications, and a number of them, that come from a wide variety of sources, too. And so the question for many organizations becomes, well, we have certain apps that are going to just be used for maybe just note-taking or certain, conferencing options. But there's going to be a number of applications that we're going to need that probably need to access our secure backend and data sources. And we need to make sure that we actually have the agility and the ability to then roll out new apps, connect them, and with regards to the user experience, not make users have to sign in to an application each application every time they want to use it. So single sign-on options are of interest, and a lot of these things that really are going to impact both the security and secure access to data, but also a great experience and ease of access. And so that's, I think, where we see a lot of companies still a little bit hung up right now, but definitely looking to pursue and evolve beyond kind of just the device management component into something that's really more tuned to getting things done for employees. We look at adoption, too, and we see that really smartphones have been that kind of starting point. They end up actually really showing that, that's what most employees are going to have in their hands. Because of the nature of it, because it's a phone, we see in personal settings, that's something, obviously, that people really have a much stronger need to. But tablets are definitely on the rise, too, in many organizations, both from, and probably initially, in many cases, at least, from employees who maybe have their own. We see executives and certain employee groups like, say, sales, who are interested in these devices because they're highly mobile. But we also see large investments from organizations, too, around field service and also sales and marketing and certain types of customer-facing roles that absolutely have probably a greater need for a tablet, but only that form factor is only going to be relevant to that employee if they have all the access to their data that they need on it, and therefore that means not only kind of access directly to maybe certain individual files, but ways to see customer information potentially. So really applications that are going to be able to really serve those tools well, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why we see mobile app and tablet kind of adoption here as pretty close in general. The fact that a smartphone overall has still the phone component and has the email component there. So if you're adding in another device, well, there's got to be more relevance to it than just another email device with a larger screen. And so this desire, both by employees and business units as a whole, to actually get some really more maturity around these devices and therefore more apps, better tools, I think really shows that kind of linkage there. We throw out the application or the App Store component here as well, and that's really just a factor of scale that folks are looking. Once they have a large portfolio, potentially, they want it to be easy to update, manage, and then allow employees to go and get access to all the apps that are going to be relevant to them based on who they are and what their job is. And so when we look at kind of how some of the MDM vendors or even just mobile management technology as a whole is really evolving, we see kind of two components. And really on the left side, that's been more towards just the device and maybe, some usage requirements there. But here on the left, the apps and data, or sorry, on the right, the apps and data segment here is actually, I think, where we're going to see a majority of the focus over the next couple of years and really, a number of tools that are starting to emerge. And that's honestly based on what customers are asking for. I speak to really a number of clients on a weekly basis who talk about what their mobile strategy should be like and where they should be evolving or what the next step should be. And it always centers really around access to the right data and better and control over applications, because they have then a roadmap for a number of applications to be either built or purchased. And while they're doing it usually on slower kind of rollouts, choosing kind of individual employee segments to target because they want to make sure they're getting the relevant tools, they still have a large number of requests that are coming in and a lot that they want to do with it. They just want the ability to not have that take $100,000, $1 million for an individual application, and also then a year to roll out or 6 months. So that those kind of investments in time and money are a big part of where folks are looking for help here when they're talking about rolling out apps and data. And just some more kind of data to show where they are targeting. I mentioned kind of the customer-facing employees are really the ones who are getting kind of the first pass at a lot of mobile apps. And this is when we talk to firms and ask IT, where are your investments and where's your kind of strategy being centered around? It is these, sales and field service really who come up first and foremost. But components of customer service, retail environments have quite a bit for, floor staff and help there. And absolutely marketing components as well. Often, you'll have people who will be mobile, but also are just maybe looking to have these devices as well to engage with their demographics. So those are definitely where we see folks starting these kind of rollouts in terms of apps, but they are looking to absolutely really get this to the entire workforce. That's only a small component of the employees in any given organization. And when we look at the types of apps too, there are these kind of basic communications tools that really still end up being the killer app. Email, calendar, and then SMS and IM kind of coming into that. And you have your note-taking. These are all things that are relevant to all employees. But what's really interesting here, I think, as a call-out for it, ends up being this 32% of organizations, when we ask which types of apps they're using, they're really using specific line of business apps. And this is just to really reinforce the conversation around that people are looking for things that are relevant to them, that are going to help them get their jobs done, not something that's going to be just an all-encompassing tool or something that's somehow going to be relevant for everybody. That end-user experience, that value from these really comes from being relevant to them and helping them individually. So that's, again, just showing kind of where the apps are being built. There's a lot of targeted ones that are going to happen. I expect actually this to probably increase significantly over the next, say, 12 months. And so when we ask clients what they're looking for, or when we see the more progressive organizations and what they're trying to do, it's really an evolved mobile strategy centered around back-end data access and application access. But that means that there has to be security components built around there, and there has to be agility and flexibility built in. So after a BYOD strategy means you don't own the device, and therefore you need to work on securing corporate information that's going to be transferred and ability to access that rather than trying to really just control the device in and of itself. And so while there are these mobile device and security management options that show up, that's only one kind of piece of the puzzle and usually the first step for most. And that kind of next step ends up being looking at ways to tackle file sync and share for those presentations or documents that might need to be worked on. Being able to secure and securely provision applications that might go to an individual group and assign them by their role in the organization, attach them to an identity as a person rather than just a device. But obviously what that means is a large number of corporate data has to be easily accessible for internal development teams or external teams hired, and there has to be a way for employees to take advantage of that data without compromising then obviously any regulatory concerns that might come up, or even just personal or company mandates around protecting IP. And so having that really a secure mobile development option really is a big piece, because we see a lot more developers who are actually being hired in to organizations to build more data or more apps and give more data access overall. So to kind of round out just this kind of overall trends that we're seeing and pass it over to Dimitri, I just wanted to kind of show that really the path to enablement and that we see most following is really kind of 3 phases, and I talk about it as MDM here in the first step. But the second step here around device independence, tablets enter into the picture, but really it's the applications that get pushed to the forefront there. So we see kind of individual apps that are maybe written and and have then one specific component of data that goes in, but we don't necessarily have this flexibility to easily get a sense of where your data is, how it's, and make it readily accessible into any of these. So while most folks are really rounding the corner in terms of kind of the app and the data component in the second step, the future really is to bring in all devices, make data accessible in an easy way, regardless of if the app is a native app, it's a web app, regardless of where the employee is, and who they are in some cases, obviously with the right kind of security components built in. So definitely, while you're not probably alone if you're in one of these earlier steps, just trying to paint kind of the vision of where we're looking to get to. And it doesn't mean it has to be something you have to do overnight or get to overnight. This is absolutely an evolution, and you're going to have to really start small and continuously tweak and evolve your own strategies and policies. But there are tools that can help you in really getting to more of this data independence and device independence. And so I think I'll pass it over to Dimitri now, who will be able to kind of take us through some of Layer 7's capabilities and more in deep dive into that data component.
Thank you very much, Christian. So I'm going to kind of pick up where Christian left off. So I think he did a great job outlining how consumerization of IT has kind of moved the mobility industry forward. So where we originally started with technologies like MDM, that were really about kind of asset management in terms of devices, being able to do device lock, device wipe, things of that sort. The forcing function for a lot of enterprises has been, as they move beyond just into this consumerized world where people bring their own device, they've had to look up the stack a little bit and look at technologies like mobile application management and mobile content management to be able to secure the data that resides on the device. The challenge or the limitation with that, of course, is that while it addresses some of the concerns with security and management of the data that resides on the device and in the app, it's still missing a big piece of it. And I think that one of the things that we've identified from enterprise customers is that, of course, the apps at the end of the day are only as good as the data that they access from some enterprise resource. So that could be a database, that could be a SharePoint, that could be a big data archive, it could be a cloud service that belongs to that enterprise. And so as a consequence, what we're finding is that organizations need this device to data center solution to both address kind of the life cycle of data as it goes from the enterprise organization out to the mobile device. And what's interesting about kind of the story that CA has here, of course, is that at CA World they announced an MDM solution, a MAM solution, mobile content management solution, and of course now with the addition of Layer 7, there's also a capability to address some of those back-end concerns. So APIs are the things that really connect what resides in the enterprise in terms of the data and the application to the app. The app today, whether it's native, whether it's hybrid, however you build it, whether you use tooling like a Titanium or JavaScript or HTML5, relies on an API to access that information that may reside inside of an SAP system, inside of a PeopleSoft system, or any other kind of resource inside of the organization. And at the end of the day, from a security perspective, what that means and what that entails is that the security of that data flow between the enterprise and the app will only be as good as that weakest link. So even with an investment in MDM and MAB and mobile content management, if that app still relies on information that it needs to gather from a back-end system, there needs to be some way of securing access to that back-end system in a mobility context. So again, you'll see that there's a number of technologies, and CA, again, very recently announced a whole division and a number of products to be able to address the security challenges of an app on a device. And again, starting with MDM to MAM to mobile content management, supporting technologies like wrapping and libraries, et cetera. But of course, there still needs to be a mechanism or some way to be able to protect those back-end systems that are now exposing information to that app. So one of the propositions that Layer 7 is putting forward is this idea of being able to address that full range of device to data center security through the mechanism or the means of securing that API. So again, within the broader CA portfolio now, there's a capability to start at the device, end at the data center API, and then again, provide a facility for securing that entire end-to-end communication from the back-end application to the device, whether it's a mobile phone, whether it's a tablet app. And here you have a nice representation of what that actually entails. Because Layer 7 has built a reputation over 11 years now of being able to secure and manage APIs. That's the bread and butter. We have 300 customers worldwide that are focused exclusively on being able to expose big enterprise data, big enterprise applications to a variety of consuming apps. Again, they could reside on mobile phones, mobile tablets, in vehicles. There's a diversity of use cases, but what they all share in common is, again, this need to be able to protect that back-end API, and that's a place that Layer 7 can play with its mobile Gatekeeper or mobile API access solution. So the Layer 7 API gateway can act as a mobile access solution that addresses these 5 critical functions when you're exposing back-end data and applications to a mobile app. It addresses some of the cornerstone identity and SSO elements when you're, again, taking an internal identity context and then mapping it to something like an OAuth so that a device, so that an app and an app builder will be able to deal with some of the access requirements in a lightweight way. Or similarly in some of the SSO capabilities. It'll address some of the mobile application firewalling. So many of you will be familiar with web application firewalling, where there's an analog in the mobile arena, where you're dealing with API interfaces that are exposed to the internet. They need protection against denial of service. They need protection against their data needs to be validated before it hits your end system. There's streaming technologies like WebSockets, again, that introduce new potential risk vectors. So all of that can be lumped under this category of mobile application firewalling. Thirdly, in the case of mobile access, there's always a requirement of mobile adaptation. In many cases, enterprises will have back-end data, could be a relational database, it could be a SharePoint, that may not be rendered in the right kind of API format for that mobile app to access it. So there's this translation or adaptation requirement that a mobile access solution like Layer 7 can perform. Fourthly, this idea of optimization. Again, there's a range of optimization challenges that are born out or that come with mobility. So they can mean everything in terms of aggregating messages so that you're not processing as many small messages. It could mean caching responses so that, again, you're not hitting your back-end systems as many times. It could mean compression. It could mean a couple of things. And again, technologies like Layer 7's can address the range of those optimization challenges. And lastly is this broader problem of when you have an app, an enterprise app, and again, this is built by an organization either for their consumers or for their employees, and it's accessing resources that may not physically reside any longer inside of the corporate data center. They may be corporate resources, but they reside inside of a SharePoint, or sorry, inside of a Salesforce, or inside of a Workday. So how do you orchestrate those interactions? Realizing there's going to be identity challenges, realizing there's going to be data security, data sync challenges. So again, some of the technology from Layer 7 in terms of mobile access could address this. So right here, you kind of have a representation of the 5 pieces of what an API mobile access solution should look like. They should help you address some of the identity challenges in terms of translation, federation. They should address some of the mobile application firewalling, so how do you do the data security and the interface security. They should help you adapt any kind of back-end to be mobile ready. They should help you in terms of optimization. And then lastly, they should help you operate in a hybridized environment where, again, some of your information assets no longer reside in your physical data center, but may reside in an Amazon Web Services or a Salesforce or some other cloud environment. So from an identity standpoint, I'll just go through some of the common use cases. We often find customers asking about being able to take whatever they have in place, whatever web access infrastructure, like a CA SideMinder, and being able to map it into an OAuth infrastructure. So that's a very, very common use case. They may also want to be able to enhance, again, leveraging their investment in web single sign-on, and take that and add it into the mobility sphere, and again, providing that bridge to mobility. From an application firewalling, again, there's often needs not only to protect the interface, there's a need to protect the data that flows to those backends, but on top of that, there's these newer streaming-based protocols, whether they're around messaging like XMPP or financial data streaming through WebSockets that leave ports open, and as a consequence, those create vulnerabilities. And Layer 7's mobile access solution, again, provides a way of securing those stream protocols. Translation and adaptation we've talked about. There's a secondary piece inherent in a lot of this, which is orchestration. So in many instances, an organization, an enterprise, will have a diverse set of back-end information resources. They may want to compose new custom APIs specific to one set of mobile apps, whether they're employee, consumer, partner-facing. And again, rather than building everything custom to every mobile app, you use a technology like Layer 7s to essentially virtualize a new API that's presented to just that mobile app for just that purpose. And in the background, again, there could be any number of callouts that Layer 7 could orchestrate. Optimization, we talked a little bit about already. You'll see more examples of the type of optimizations. Certainly caching is important. Prefetch, if you're using particular types of APIs called hypermedia-based APIs. But what's key across all of this is that, again, performance will matter. If your employees or your consumers don't have performant apps, then they'll just stop using them. And so anything you could do to both monitor and improve the performance is going to be critical. And again, CA Technologies has a wealth of capabilities from their availability assurance business, and in tandem with Layer 7, that provides a more complete capability around APIs in the context of mobility. And then lastly, this idea, again, of being able to orchestrate interactions with the cloud. We find over and over in the enterprise today that they no longer have all of their information within their data center four walls. A lot of their data assets reside externally. But creating that centralized control point that can orchestrate those interactions is absolutely vital. It simplifies matters for security. It simplifies matters for enterprise architecture. And again, is a cornerstone of what mobile access solution can do. So just to kind of wrap up, again, part of the thesis here is that in order to have a complete end-to-end mobile security solution, you're going to need to be able to secure the device, secure the app, and secure the data and content that resides on the app. But you also need a facility for being able to secure that back-end callback, that communication that goes into those enterprise resources, whether they reside in your data center or whether they reside in your partitions in the cloud, so to speak. And of course, with Layer 7, you now have a way to be able to secure that back-end callback through the API. And together in tandem with some of the other components within the CA portfolio, you now have a true end-to-end mobile security solution that could span the device to the data center. And at this point, I think we are ready to see if anybody has any questions. So I see there's a few here. So I'm just going to basically answer them from the screen here. So one of the questions is, what is the best way to implementing SSO into mobile apps? Authentication SDK, app or browser-based SSO, example with OAuth. So, introducing sessioning into a mobile context is obviously vital. It's certainly an area that Layer 7 has been thinking about for quite a while. In the cases that we see in the enterprise, customers already have investments in web session management, web SSO, and they want to be able to reuse that. And so for Layer 7's API solution and this mobile access solution, if you will, it's been absolutely vital for us to be able to bridge what they already have, what enterprise has in place, and take it out to the device. We typically do that through SDK. There is mechanisms to do that through wrapping as well. And I think you'll see over the next little while solutions in a multitude of these areas. But what's important for us as both Layer 7 and SCA is that, again, being able to extend that mobile SSO experience out to the app, so that, again, single login will get you access to all your employee apps on a device. So I'm just going through here. Another question. Are the slides available later? Yes, the slides, along with the recording, will be sent out as a follow-on to this. How would you? So the next question is, how would you handle updates to API data? I would like to put price data closer to mobile, but have a complex pricing logic in my backend. So there's a variety of things you could do around it. Kind of updating your API, so to speak, and updating the data on the API. So there are data synchronizations capabilities that are built into the gateway. Obviously, one of the other things that I've talked about is this theme of adaptation. So as your API itself needs to evolve, you could do that in the gateway as opposed to rebuilding your backend. So that provides a level of flexibility. As that data needs to get pushed out, one of the things we see very commonly is the use of technologies like WebSockets. So the data is pushed, if you will, as opposed to request response, so that, again, you could push information and keep an open socket. So whether it's financial data like a stock price that gets pushed out. In a similar vein, another thing that we see very commonly among our customers is this idea of being able to push notifications to their employees or to their customers. Maybe the notifications are around particular data and the requirement to refresh. Maybe the notifications are around there's a new version of the app. Maybe the notifications are around a promotion. Now, integration with notification services, both from Apple and Android, require typically some level of tinkering, some level of coding. Now, in our mobile access solution, on our API gateway designed for the mobility environment, we actually have pre-built integrations with notification clouds for both Android and Apple, so that, again, you could push out notifications as you need them. Next question, is Layer 7 API a cloud service or an SDK? It's actually a product. It's a product, it's a gateway. It looks like a virtual proxy, if you will, that sits between, in your DMZ, between the back-end systems and the mobile apps. So the mobile apps use it as the endpoint that it calls to access any back-end service. Now, Layer 7 does offer SDKs. So if you wanted to wrap or extend the security model into a mobile app, so for instance, that is how we support things like mobile SSO. So again, I talked a little bit earlier how the gateway can provide some of the credentialing and identity translation between what you may already have invested in inside of the enterprise and OAuth as an example. But let's say you wanted to go one step further in terms of adding an SSO layer. So again, there is an SDK for that as well. And again, if you're interested, we could certainly point you to a team that could provide you a demo of that. And another question, we talked about OAuth and tokens, but how about REST-based message signing for mobile? So we do support, and I think I'm going to go back here a couple of slides. We support a variety of token types. They include, here we go, JSON web tokens. So kind of in the style of REST, we support certificate management on the device. So there's a number of native hooks, particularly into the Android class of devices. So there's a diversity of capabilities available going beyond just the gateway that goes onto the device that leverages some of the inherent APIs on the device as well, in particular in the Android case. And I'm just looking. Is there closed captioning? I'm not sure if there's closed captioning. I'm not sure how to activate that, but certainly you will receive a copy and a version of this in a recording. Let me just see if there's anything else I haven't answered here. I think that's it for questions right now. Okay, well, I think we're done. Christian, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
Not from my end. I mean, I think it was all, yeah, pretty straightforward. But definitely if folks had more questions, feel free. Reach out. Happy to answer anything that folks might have.
Oh, one sec. I do have a couple late-minute questions coming in. So one is around multi-factor support for the device. So I think, one interesting aspect of CA is that in addition to the products I mentioned around MDM and MAM and mobile content that were announced at CA World, there's also an ability to support strong authentication. Increasingly, organizations are looking for vehicles beyond just username password to be able to secure access into a device. And again, there is a strong authentication product specifically designed for that use case that Layer 7 will be integrating with. So again, it provides customers a way of going beyond just traditional username password to gain access to a mobile app and a stronger kind of soft token. What additional security is needed for mobile? So again, I think like an onion, we hear that approach quite often when we talk about defense in depth. Mobility is a little bit like that. So MDM could be viewed as an approach to securing the device in case a device is lost or so forth. In some instances, it's too intrusive, particularly in a BYOD instance. And so as a consequence, some organizations overlay a MAM solution, which deals with app-level security and distribution. And then beyond that, I think, as Christian pointed out earlier, there's often a requirement to be able to secure the data and the content that actually may live on the device that's being synchronized with services like Box and et cetera. And then, of course, there's a need to secure the communication channel going back into the enterprise, and then the access to the APIs in the enterprise as well. So there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to mobile security. But what's important to realize is that particularly CA can be an effective partner for you because it does address a lot of the checkboxes in terms of how you want to be able to secure your app from device to the data center. And I believe that is it. So unless anybody else has a question, I guess we will sign out. As I said before I go, I would like to just bring up one last thing. We will be hosting a Tech Talk Wednesday, even though it says Tuesday, on June 26th, and it'll be talking about how APIs are fueling some emerging topics around mobile and social and Internet of Things. And it'll be given by Matt McClarty out of Layer 7. So anybody else that has questions, I'll just say if you feel free to forward them to Layer 7, and we will make sure that we respond to you. And again, thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you on the next Layer 7 webinar. Thank you very much.